Welcome to the BERcast, the Building Efficiency Resources podcast. This is episode 10 of the BERcast, and on this cast, Sandy and I are going to talk about what's on our mind. What was Sandy's experience at the National Home Performance Week, and what are three things that we're kind of liking about what's going on in the industry right now, and what are three things we really don't like about what's going on in the industry right now? So we're excited to have this conversation and ready to move forward. Rolling into segment one. What's up, Sandy?
Nothing, Chris. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man. So last episode, I should say, we talked about your trip to the National Home Performance Conference, hosted by the Building Performance Association in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Go ahead and tell me about your experience. You know, what was the tone and tenor of the event?
So it was great turnout, right? It was over 2,500 people there. Second largest conference ever. So definitely the COVID stuff is definitely going away, and people are starting to engage more and more. I got to tell you, it was a great experience. I had Zyra McCalla, our business development lead, out there with me, and we got to spend a lot of time together and talk to customers. A lot of questions, right? So this whole conference is, has traditionally been, focused on existing buildings. And, recently with the changes in the IRA and all the DOE programs, resident HERS radios are now 100%, included in all these programs. So there was a lot of questions, right? A lot of questions. But it was exciting. It was like, almost going into a new market, even though, Raiders could do existing home for years. There's never been a great focus on it. So, a lot of questions about training, a lot of questions about certification. A lot of people on that side don't even really know what a HERS Raider is, don't really understand the process. So, it was great to be able to have those conversations. I would say that, again, and, we're going to talk about this in our next segment, but, the talk about workforce development and training just continues to be overwhelming. And I think that, that's, I'll expand more into that in the next segment, but that was, probably the number one topic of conversation while I was there. I did get to go to some pretty decent breakout sessions. The last one was interesting, was air water source heat pumps. I actually sent you a text about that. So that was kind of interesting. I went to that actually with one of our clients up in Minnesota from TNWW, Rick Cobb. So, it was it was a long week. It was 6 days. I got there Sunday, set up the booth, of course, caught up with people all day. Then it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then flying back Friday. But it was fun. It was great to be, it's kind of exciting, from a, business development standpoint, to kind of be in new territory, and talk about all the things that we talk about on, where we are today in the resident industry. Not a lot. I mean, a lot of talk about the IRA, not a lot of negative talk. One of the things that we spoke about, last time, on our podcast was, everybody's a little like uptight about what may happen, considering certain, political wins that may occur. And none of that. I mean, very little of that. Was more very positive. It was great to hang out with everybody from the BPA. We got to commune with our friends and our partners, and overall, it was just a great experience, Chris.
Okay, so not too much hesitation or consternation about the IRA. Excited about? Were people really excited about? You mentioned workforce development, but are people starting to gear up for these state rollouts of the homes and HERA rebates?
So there was a lot, yeah, and it was a lot of talk of that, a lot of talk about 25C, a lot of talk, there was a lot of manufacturers there, more than I would have anticipated. It wasn't the biggest, floor, for the show, but there was a reception every night, and there was a lot of conversation going on about all these things. I think people are excited about, the chance, the opportunity with all these programs in place to really make a difference, and I think that's what the majority were excited about is that, this is a big opportunity. You and I have discussed this, till, our heads are going to pop off, but it is. And it's nice to see that it's not just, our side of the industry, but it's all sides of the industry that are really excited about it. I think, if there was a monochrome of concern, it was in the training side of it, right? We don't have enough people to do it. We don't have enough skilled people, and I think that's where Raiders can really, especially from our side of the industry, the primarily new construction side of the industry, where we primarily operate. I think there's a great opportunity. I shouldn't say great opportunity to expand their businesses, because there is going to be a lack of certified, qualified, credentialed, however you want to put it, uh, people who are experts in what we do. So, I would say if there was any concern, it was more along those lines of, how do we get more people into our industry to get this work done?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, we go back to the boondoggle from 2008, 2009, all the ARA funding that really gave a tremendous shot in the arm for the weatherization industry and got a lot of people trained to become BPI building analysts and envelope professionals and resnet professionals. And that money basically dried up by about 2011, 2012. And so you had a lot of training centers right around that
Yeah.
time. You had community colleges and sort of, nonprofit community organizations becoming training centers. And I get the impression that a lot of the people from that era who were trainers kind of, they went on to other things. Now, they may still be in the industry, but they're not necessarily out there ready to go and take the show on the road in the way that they were 10, 15 years ago. And so I think it's an opportunity for whoever cracks that nut. I mean, I'll say, BER, we like getting out on the road and training, but it takes a special professional who has, some legitimate experience not only in the industry but also, with adult education. You don't just want to send somebody out there who isn't going to really help to be a good educator ultimately. So, and all I can say is these people don't grow on trees. We have, other, colleague competitor organizations that are doing trainings out there, Green Training USA, Everblue, but I get the impression that they're mainly doing it online. And I think that there's sort of a need for some in-person training. We have
There is
colleagues.
actually a want for it. I think there is actually a demand for it, Chris. I mean, if there was another overriding factor in that conversation, it was that precise point. That people want to get back in the live training classroom. People want to be able to, touch, feel, look, discuss, come up with questions and get them answered, without, going through, an online system or trying to reach out to somebody via email. There is definitely a definitely a discernible difference between a really quality online training, which can be great, but then when you go to in person, there's a discernible difference here. And I think that as we progress here, I think that you're going to see more and more of that. Even from us. I mean, we're already making plans to do it. So, um, but that was a very tangible part of the whole thing. The other part I would say is too is that I think your point on the training centers that popped up all over the place or expanded or grew. I mean, when I went to SSEC to become a Raider way back, and I mean the class was packed, right? And that was during that time. Not so much anymore, right? Or any of those classes, but I think you're starting to see that. But I think what's going to happen with that is that these organizations, these municipalities, these places are going to turn to the experts to be able to do this. And I think it makes it a great opportunity for us to, as an industry to really shine, as the source for all of this required workforce development.
Was there any talk about specific skills that were really kind of needed? Because I kind of feel like we kind of been there, done that in terms of, sort of basic level professional training, building analyst level training. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we need to restock up on people who have those credentials. What was the talk? What was in the greatest amount of need in terms of professionalizing our industry?
Field people, field trained
Okay.
inspection people, I would
Okay.
say, and I don't even mean not necessarily just in the radar or VPI analyst side, but even in, places like insulation and, air sealing and, there's a definite demand, which I think presents a great opportunity for a young person that's looking for a career because there's a lot of desire out there for people who can do this kind of work. And if you can become an expert and learn it, your craft, you become a very valuable part of the whole system. But I would say, the biggest hole that was discussed was actually people who can execute in the field, on the ground, boots on the ground.
Okay. Well, you heard it here. You heard it here first, folks. It's time to get ready to get back in the field and get trained up. We need more of us out there so that we legitimize ourselves, so that we, demonstrate clearly that there's enough people because sometimes we hear that what's holding back, like say the advancement of codes or certain programs, is we just don't have enough people who know how to do it. And I sort of am a little bit in disbelief about that sometimes. Sometimes I think that that's sort of an excuse, and the truth is we maybe already have, plenty of really good people. But let's not make the lack of training and professionalizing ourselves the reason why we can't move forward with this tremendous opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, with that being said, I'd just say we're going to go ahead and roll into segment two. Sandy and I got some things we've got to get off our chest. There's some things that we really like that are going on. There's a couple things we are not so excited about. So we're going to roll into segment two right now. All right. So segment two, Sandman, my main man, Sandy Gallo. You and I, are we cynics or are we optimists? Which one are we? I
We're
don't know.
absolutely optimists. We're if there is a believer, we are true believers. I would say
Of the two of us, who's the bigger cynic, you or me?
you by far.
Yeah, you're right. But you know what?
Yeah.
I gotta work on that. I've had some reason to be
I'm
cynical,
rubbing
but I
off
gotta
on you a
work.
little bit, Chris. I'm rubbing off on you a little bit. I mean,
That's true. Well, today we're gonna reverse roles. All right. I'm gonna be the optimist. You hear that, folks? Chris McTaggart is in a good mood today. And so we're going to go ahead and talk about three things that we like and don't like, basically. And I'm going to go with the two things that I like, and I'll give one thing that I don't like. And Sandy's going to talk about two things that he doesn't like and one thing that he likes. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off here. A thing that I really am excited about. I am excited that the EPA Energy Star Homes program is I think ready to kind of take it to the next level with their program from a couple of different angles. First and foremost, we have to go back to something that we brought up all the way going back to episode one, which is the EPA is charting a path forward for itself for obligating a more robust quality assurance program for Energy Star. And this is something that would be administered through the HCOs. And I think that the details of exactly how that's going to be done are still forthcoming. The EPA is still soliciting feedback for round two. So if you're interested in this topic, this is the time to get involved. This is the time to go ahead and make sure that your voice is heard on this because it's important. Basically, for all intents and purposes, there's really been one major HCO nationally, which is ResNet. And the power to basically oversee the Energy Star home certification has been delegated to the accredited providers in ResNet's network. That sounds good, right? That makes sense because providers are QA providers, quality assurance providers. Well, okay, yeah, but there are 80 some odd providers, and out of those 80 or so odd providers, Um, about 50% of them are purely direct providers, meaning they are rating companies that have also set up a quality assurance apparatus to oversee their own work. And then maybe about another 25% of providers are what we would call hybrid providers, where sort of they're primarily doing their own work, but they'll also take on some independent raters. So, good 75% of the providers that are out there are kind of self-providing, I guess you could say, and self-quality assuring. And look, our industry has gone back and forth and talked about, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Does it facilitate the quality assurance process and sort of unlock sort of economies of scale? Or is the fox watching the hen house? And I'm not here to debate that here. I don't care to have that conversation. Again,
Mm,
I've been
I
on the
am.
record. Oh yeah, well I'm sure. Well, you've seen it from both perspectives, and look, I'll just say, look, BER is trying really hard to do the right thing. We're also not perfect. I bet that there are some direct providers that are trying really hard to do the right thing that are also not perfect. So I think the idea behind this, that the EPA wants more oversight of what the providers are doing from the HCOs, specifically their program, makes sense. And I'm fine with it being something that is sort of over any kind of business model of being a provider. What are you thinking about this, Sandy? What do you think about this? Any new news or thoughts on the EPA updating its QA process?
Well, I mean, I'm excited about it, right? I think it's long overdue. I mean, I think personally the entire QA process needs to be overhauled, right? I mean, to be honest with you, I think that, I think that when people, when you explain this to people that are maybe on the fringe of our industry or not in our industry, they all have the same reaction. It's like, wait a minute, you get to grade your own homework, and and it's like, and like, eh, look, I will tell you that, you could make arguments on both sides. There are excellent organizations out there that are direct providers that do a good job. Are they perfect? No, nobody's perfect, but they do a really good job of making sure that they're following the standards, that they're enforcing it with the customer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we have evidence with this whole lawsuit, I mean, this whole settlement with another provider, that there's actors out there that aren't doing the right thing. And that's a fact. No one can argue that. The fact is indisputable. So I say this, you know, I have strong. I've worked on both sides. Okay, so I understand it just about as good as anybody can. Um, I would say that the improved or expanded QA is well overdue and needed. The first argument everybody's going to make, Chris, is cost. Because they always make that argument. Oh my God, it costs too much. Oh my God, it costs, it's going to increase this, it's going to increase that. Okay. At some point, we have to be honest with each other and in this industry and say, there is a cost to doing it right. Now, I'm not advocating that cost needs to be external and out of control, but I would say that to ensure a quality product, it costs money. Any company, any organization, any program that ensures quality assurance or ensures a great product wants great quality assurance and is willing to pay that extra to make sure it's right. So we got to get past that paradigm. Now, is there reasonable amounts of price increase? Yes. I'm not advocating that it should cost, billions of dollars to do this or anything like that, but there is going to inherently be a cost. And you know what? Let's be honest. When we get an increased cost in this industry, no matter who it is, I mean, just ask a purchasing manager at a national builder. when HVAC was going up on a monthly basis and they were taking price increases. Well, they got two choices, right? They either they're either going to buy the HVAC equipment at the increased price, or they're not going to have air conditioning and they're not going to be able to sell any homes. At some point, we have to kind of take that same approach where, look, there is a cost to doing business, you know, um, and that includes every cost, in our business. If you're going to be a provider, it's ridiculous how much you pay to be a provider in this business. There should be an increased cost of entry. You can't go into any other business as economically as you can in this one, and with no experience, and then grade your own homework. I mean, just think about that for a second, Chris. That makes absolutely no sense. None. It really doesn't. So I'm not, look, I'm not a punitive guy. I'm a coaching guy. You know that. I'm not really. I prefer, to use, a gentle word than a hammer. But when you have to use the hammer, sometimes you got to use the hammer, right? Well, it's time to hit somebody over the head with a hammer and say, "Wake up!" You know, there's the facts are the facts, and it's obviously a problem. And as an industry, we have to come together and solve it. And part of that's going to be increased cost, increased things that we have to do in order to do it. And I think I'm actually excited that Energy Star is leading the way. And not from any other standpoint, from a business standpoint, Energy Star got Resnet and everybody else pinned. I mean, they have really no choice. So, I think the way they're going about it, the second public commentary, all these things are the right way to do it. I think they should be applauded on their approach. I think it's long overdue. And I think our industry as a whole needs to wake up and say, you know what? This is a problem, number one, right? We've talked about this many times. Let's stop sweeping it under the carpet and pretending it doesn't exist. One, there is a problem, and two, we have to solve it. For the credibility of our industry, for the success of our industry, for the success for everyone in our industry, we have to solve this problem, Chris.
It's funny you should say about confronting the things that we've known for a while and how we need to address them and not sweep them under the rug, because that's the other thing I'm pretty excited about the EPA with. So I have been a little thorn in Dean Gamble's side here for about 10 years plus, making a lot of critique and commentary on things that I think work in Energy Star version 3 and things that don't work. And there's a chance that some of the things that I've been advocating for may actually come to pass. And I don't want to say too much necessarily before anything actually happens, but I'm just going to go ahead and say this one thing. Energy Star in general has not been able to deliver on its promise of grade 1 insulation in homes across America. Why do I say that, Sandman? Because the most economies of scale produced insulation product in America is fiberglass bats. And fiberglass bats, even when installed decently, are prone to moderate installation defects, particularly compression, because people are just going fast. We got guys out there on stilts running around trying to get this done
On
before the
piece rate, no
drywall
less.
gets
On piece rate, don't forget. So they only
on
get paid
piece
by the
rate.
piece.
Yeah, and look, labor is in short supply, and so you got a lot of brand new crews, and look, it's a hard job. So look, again, I don't want to say too much because the cat's, it's not all there yet, but it's time for us to just be honest. And you know what? Ultimately, folks, grade 2 is pretty good. It's good enough. It's a whole lot better than, I'd rather say, let's call it grade 2 than going with, good or bad,
Yeah, no, let's not
properly
start that
installed
stupid
versus not
conversation
properly
again.
installed. We talked about that, a few episodes ago. That's thankfully, it sounds like that's dead in the water.
Thank God.
I dropped the mic on that one. I'll tell you what. But aside from that, the other thing is maybe we're getting to a point where, moderate framing is good enough too. The reality is that this idea that Raiders were going to go and be the yeomans of the world to teach builders and framers on how to frame houses, like that's a nice idea in theory. It's almost impossible in reality to really get people to cause that change. Now, some builders will listen if they see the business case and they can understand, hey, if I save 10% on my framing package, and you put it across, 1,000 house subdivision, that's some serious money, and if it doesn't affect the structural integrity of the home, then why not? But here's the deal. There's a lot of small to medium sized builders or builders in areas of the country that just they haven't gotten hip yet to advanced framing. I live adjacent to Ann Arbor, Michigan, which Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, really smart green town. Look, they don't know how to build advanced framing there. They don't. And the framing crews just aren't comfortable with it really. And so it's not like everybody who doesn't minimally frame around windows and doors is just an idiot. It's just that this is the way that people do it and they think that they need to for whatever reason. I can't even say if they're right or wrong, because I'm just a rater. I'm not a framing expert. I really don't know. Yeah, sure. The EPA told me that a single pair of kings and jacks was good enough, but how am I really going to go and tell somebody who's a carpenter that they're wrong by over framing this?
Oh,
So
well, I mean, not to mention the factors that all you got to do is run to an engineer and say that it's structural and get it signed, and then it's just it's a waste of everybody's time. I
it
mean,
is.
the whole cripple thing, where it measures off on the stud. How many graders you ever see measure off from where the sheetrock begins to figure out if a cripple is right or not? I mean, never, never. So,
And here's
again,
the other big thing is it's like it's not that I think advanced framing is a bad idea. I think it's a good
it's a great
idea,
idea.
but in the scheme of things, it's not like we're talking about radically changing the performance of a house. I think some things do more than others. Like, I mean, super solid corners with no insulation in them. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's dumb. Solid headers with no insulation on them. Yeah, that's dumb. We don't have to do that. But I think all the other sort of penny ante stuff, especially the framing around windows and doors. Anyways, I don't want to say too much, but I will just say there's some opportunity where some of these things may become a little bit more straightforward. And the last thing I'll say is maybe we're getting to the point where there's actually an infiltration mandatory requirement instead of a big long checklist of ticks and checks for air barriers and air sealing details, because this thing always tricks up people. Like even the QADs that work for BER, they're like, oh well, it's Energy Star, but it didn't meet 3 ACH50. I'm like, it doesn't have to.
right.
The reality is that for Energy Star, there is no mandatory air tightness limit unless you're doing Energy Star multifamily new construction, in which case there is. But for homes, there isn't. And there were actually raters that are like trying to like for like townhome developments, they're kind of like trying to push as much stuff into homes, even though technically from an ERI basis, it's probably easier to do multifamily new construction simply because there's no limit on air leakage. And some building configurations lend themselves to be leakier than others without more attention to detail. So look, again, I don't want to say that the EPA is definitely doing this stuff, but I will say that they are entertaining it in a way that they never had before. And I'm excited about that, Sandy.
Absolutely. Me too.
All right. Well, Sandy, you got something in your craw. So tell me what's been bugging you here, buddy.
So, as I look at the landscape of IRA and all this workforce development stuff and, everything that's exciting in our industry, I still find one glaring issue with it. And that's that we have not addressed the issue with training code officials. And it's a serious issue. I mean, I know, from my direct provider days that I've had to fly to cities, with a building performance report or whatever the case may be to make them understand performance path and actually educate them because they have no training. Now, here is basically the problem, right? I was lucky enough to take your class, the first one I think you gave at ResNet. and I became a code official, right? I'm a residential energy inspector plans exam. I have never had to recertify on another code again. Now, here's the problem. We have building inspectors that haven't certified since the 2006 or the 2009. I mean, the ICC puts the numbers out themselves. The average code inspector is between 55 and 65, less than 10 years from retirement. So that means they've been operating in this business for 20 years. And yes, they have mandatory, continuing education, but nothing says in the rules that they have to be up to date, at least in the code that's passed in their state. To me, that's a fault in the system. Now, I know there's been a big push to get resident HERS raters to, become, pseudo code official, third party experts, HERS compliance, on all that. And that's great. But they have the same problem too, right? It's so again, I would just say that I wish that some of this money was allocated. Now, there's some of it's allocated to code training, but it's really up to the states to decide what that is. I think they made a big mistake when they did that. They should have allocated a lot of money to bring all the code officials up to the current code. And
Yeah,
yeah, it would have been expensive. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I mean you're right. I mean, so there is money out there for sort of advancing codes at state levels and things like that, which is great. I mean, I'll say my understanding is that funding is principally driven towards states that adopt the 2021 IUCC or above. So that's
That's
not
correct.
many states yet.
No.
Now, hopefully, I guess it's more, but right now there's a lot of states that are still sort of, they're holding on to their older versions of the code, and you could argue that the code officials really aren't up to snuff or up to speed there either. When I was in West Virginia last summer, teaching on the update to their energy code to a modified version of the 2015 IUCC, there were certain things like duct blaster testing, which were mandatory as part of the previous code, the 2009 IUCC in West Virginia, that like nobody had ever heard of it. And it's not
All right.
because everybody's putting ducks inside conditioned space. No,
Mm.
no, ducks are going in attics and in crawl spaces and things like that. And so, I'm with you, Sandy. I think that this is
Well,
still a
and I
very,
think that makes our argument, though, Chris, right? It's like if you're not up to speed on the latest codes, how would you know that a blower door is required? Everybody always bitches about, oh, there's no enforcement. Well, if you don't know, you don't know, right? So, like, if the code official doesn't understand what the mandatory requirements are of the code because they haven't taken a code class since you were in high school, then maybe not that far, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
Then
I get it.
well, no, it's probably right. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, no, you're
again,
probably not wrong. There are probably code officials operating that, maybe were trained on the 1995 MEC.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. So, again, the average age 55 to 65, less than 10 years away from retirement, and no bench. So again, I just think that to me, I was very disappointed that there wasn't a concerned effort. Look, if we, this is another piece of the puzzle that needs to be solved, right? The only way that we're going to be able to advance code is if we enforce the code. The only way we can enforce the code if we're educated on how to enforce the code. So, again, it's another one of those rungs in the ladder that somebody kicked out and it needs to be put back in.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I've sort of attended these different like sort of, train the code official and the builders and the contractors on the new code. And it's always amazing to see how few people are in the room, and it's sort of like, I don't know, we need a different approach if we're really going to get there, because you're right. There's too much building out there going on for us to have ill-equipped, ill-trained code officials who then cannot enforce things because they don't really know what they are.
We get on
Um,
Raiders all the time about sharpening the saw, right? Okay, let's get trained up, let's get sharp, let's make sure we know what we're doing. Same should be for code officials.
Yeah, well, maybe our buddy Rich Truitt and myself, our buddy on the BERcast, Rich Truitt, who was on our last episode, code official from Maryland. He and I are working close together on some ResNet code initiatives. Maybe he and I can figure out how to thread that needle. But you know what? I'm going to turn back to a good thing, Sandy, and this is going to surprise a lot of people. Two good things in a row out of this guy's mouth.
You're a changed man.
I'm actually the most satisfied that I have ever been as a ResNet board member. Wow. I'd imagine that some people would be like, really, Chris?
You
Now
still
you're
miss
just
me though, right? You still miss me though. No, not really. Damn.
no. You're good. You're good. I do miss you, Sandy. You were only there for a couple months though, so so
A
it was,
year. I was there about a year. Yeah.
Yeah, I barely knew you there as a board member, but this is my third term. So, this is, year 6, as a year 5 or whatever it is. And the reason why I'm happy is we actually have some real champions of let's move the needle forward, especially when it comes to consistency and quality assurance. And you want to know who is really the loudest voice in the room? The builder representatives.
That's
I'm
amazing.
just totally blown away because, with all due respect to some of my former colleagues on the board who represented builders and contractors, they've all been good, all been very smart people, all very professional people. But whether it's their own personal philosophy of how to engage in a board, or maybe they were sent there with an agenda by corporate or whomever they represent. I've found that a lot of people go on the ResNet board, especially from these sort of associate categories, builders and contractors and appraisers and realtors, and a lot of them go on there and they play politics. And they vote yes to everything. They just say yep, 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 yep. And they don't really rock the boat, and they don't say a lot unless it's something that they know something about. And I get that. But here's the deal. Being on the ResNet board, you're representing thousands of people's livelihood. Literally thousands of people's livelihood. And so, for you just to get on the board and be kind of like a yes person.
Man.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would rather that you weren't there. I hate to say that. And it's not because I don't think that you're smart or, a good political person that looks good. But anyways, regardless, I'm not going to go there anymore. I'm just going to say I'm so grateful because we have amazing builder representatives that are on the board now. Erin Borderland from DR Horton she is so full of energy. She wants to ask all of the right questions. And she digs in there. She does not accept anything less than the full answer. And that is amazing.
Erin's great. I've known her a long
Hughes,
time, and she's very good.
Yeah, Erin just incredible. She's a powerhouse. And then Ian Hughes, man, that guy is kind of silent, takes his moment, and then he drops the friggin' battle axe. This guy gets out the heavy duty machinery. And hey, Ian, your son, I know you guys are listeners. We got a BERcast hat coming for y'all because we're happy that y'all are listeners. It makes us feel good and warm on the inside. But aside from that, seriously, Ian Hughes, he's a good Scotsman, showing up for battle along with your good old buddy Chris McTaggart. And so we have different styles. Ian told me after this last board meeting that he kept wanting to tell me to shut my mouth because I was saying too much. But everything that was coming out of my mouth, he agreed with. So he said, no, please keep going. So he decided to say nothing. I'm I'm gonna pick my spots, but I'm gonna keep being myself. And Ian, all I can say is I'm glad that you're on the board. I've got some other really good board members too, board colleagues. Leo Jansen, shout out to Leo. Leo's been a real champ. He's really stepped up to the plate and he's got some good, insightful commentary. He's not afraid to get in there. Robert Pigus from US Ecologic, again, not afraid to get in the mix and say what he's got to say. And look, we don't all necessarily agree on everything. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I don't care if we agree or not. Some board member came up to me after like some debate that we're having, and he's like, "Oh, Chris, I hope I didn't offend you." I'm like, I don't care about that at all. I'm just glad that you said something about what you think, and we were able to have a spirited debate about it. And then afterwards, we're going to go and be fine. We'll go and, eat some lunch and go out and have a beer afterwards, and it's all good. So I'm actually very satisfied with where the board is at for maybe the first time that since I've been on the board in a lot of ways. So
Yeah, no, look, I know all those people a long time that you mentioned. Ian, I've known probably 15 years. Aaron, close to that. I know we're back from the U.S. Ecologic days and stuff like that. They're great people, and I was excited to see him get on the board and excited what's going on. I would just encourage you not to be who you are, though. I want you to continue to do what you do, Chris. And it's not just me talking. It's anybody that knows you that talks to me about you is like, we love the way that you are on the board and the fact that you ask the right questions and you don't back down and you go after the things that are right for the industry. And I just hope you never stop doing that because we appreciate it. So.
thank you, Sandy. I appreciate you all too. And hey folks, here's all I can say. Not everybody likes everything that I have to say. Not everybody likes my approach. I totally get that. But I can say unabashedly, I am a fighter for the professionals in this industry. I
No
go
doubt.
out of my way to fight for membership, for raters, RFIs, modelers, providers, QADs. I'm fighting for y'all. And especially the ones who are doing it right, ones who are trying to just pay the check and pass go and collect hundreds of dollars, printing money out of your basement with no oversight. I'm not your friend. I'm not your advocate. But for y'all who are actually trying to earn an honest living and do the right thing, I am a champion for you all. I used to be a big in college. I was a big Ron Paul supporter. Dr. No, Ron Paul, and I am falling somewhat in the footsteps of Ron Paul. I'm not. I probably don't have quite the no record that he has, but on some very important votes, I've said no to them. We there was a vote to raise prices basically on the industry for per ratings. And I voted no on it. Now, I didn't vote on it just because I didn't agree on any price increase, but I felt like we were getting a little bit carried away, and I kind of wanted ResNet to prove it. Last time they raised fees, it was because we got to do this so we can hire more QA people so that we can really QA the industry the right way and solve all the problems. Well, guess what? That didn't work.
You know
So
how
we
long
raised.
ago that was, Chris? Don't even get me started.
So I was sort of like, well, let's do a moderate increase, and then they can prove that they know how to manage this money, and let's get the job done. Anyways, didn't work out that way. Again, this was that spirited debate. I had another board colleague, who was interested in let's continue to allow ResNet to keep doing more and more. Hey, look, I understand that philosophy. We'll see what they do with this price increase. Hey, folks, if you're not happy with the price increase, don't blame your buddy Chris Mack. All right. So anyway, Sandy, now that was supposed to be a good thing, and now I'm turning into a not so good thing. So let's go back to you. You're the salty
You
one
just
today.
can't
Go ahead.
resist, Chris. You're the bad cop. You just can't resist. So I would say that, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but coming from me, we're all big direct providers in my career, but I have concerns with the consolidation of the HERS industry. And when I say that, I don't say that as I don't think that there are big companies in the HERS industry that don't do a good job, because I know there are, you know, but I know that there, as we all talk about, there's players that aren't good, and I just feel as though, as an industry, we're losing something. The one great part I love about being at Bear is that we serve, we have large customers and we have small customers. But the people that are with Bear tend to be very passionate about what we do, and they're very knowledgeable and they try to learn. And I'm not saying not everybody's perfect, but they try, and they're passionate about what we do. They're passionate about the industry. When I see these larger companies, listen, I know, okay, I've been here, I've done it. I know the 100+ raters and the 40, 50, 60 people in the office. I know it. I did it. It's very hard to control it. Extremely hard to control quality. And I think that as I see the consolidation in the business, it concerns me on a bunch of levels, right? It's not just the rating companies, not just the software companies, but I see issues with competition. I see issues with, the representation in the rating company. I mean, when you're in, I don't know, I'm going to pick a random city, Virginia, and you have a rater in Montana, it's very hard to control quality assurance, check up on them. The cost is tremendous, all of that. And I have concerns that we're losing part of what made this industry great, right? Which is that personal, you know, working relationship locally, where, when I got into this business, raters were really regional, right? And it's not that I'm against rating companies expanding or anything like that. I mean, like I said, again, I preface this with the fact that I work for three of the largest in the industry, in a leadership role. But I do see the fault. I do see the control issues. I do see the mechanisms. And I think this is actually a much deeper conversation, because I do think there's a way to stem this with technology and, you know, things of that nature. Um, but I think just the overall consolidation in the industry concerns me. I think that the what's going on in the software side concerns me. I think that, I don't think we have a system in place that is going to, and I know that like Energy Star is trying to improve that and all that. So I'm not saying that we're not making some good steps, but I just don't think that infrastructure to ensure, that, this product, this HERS rating is actually the same, bar and code or whatever, from New York to Los Angeles, is not. And I think that part of the problem is that these companies have expanded extremely fast, with really what I would consider an antiquated system, right? Especially when it comes to quality assurance, and residence oversight. And I don't like the fact that as the business has grown, I mean, we can post about 4 million HERS ratings all we want. We're still using the same system we used in 1995 for the most part. Now you could say, okay, now you have a QA app. It doesn't work, Chris. So what good is that? What good is it? I mean, it really, so it's like, again, we can talk about all the stuff we're doing and we can send out all these lists, but I think that the expansion of the business, the consolidation of the business, without the right tools, the right bones, the right structure, has a chance to have a detrimental effect on our industry. What do you think about that, Chris? What say you?
Yeah, well, I mean, do we risk the too big to fail mentality? And I would argue that we probably already have. With the news that came out last fall, of the company who got themselves in a lot of hot water and kind of threw a lot of mud on all of the rest of us as a result. They're still in the business. They're still an accredited provider.
Which,
And
can I go on the record as saying that's ridiculous?
I hear you. I mean, I will say that this was something that the board debated, and it actually came down to parliamentary procedures. And Robert's rules. Ian, you are a crafty son of a gun. That guy knows how to sit on some boards because he pulled out some Robert's Rules stuff and ended up changing a little bit of what happened with that. It's not all on him. It ended up going to the accreditation committee and anyways, is that an example of too big to fail? You get, let's just say, for example, let's just say you get the largest builder in the country that then let's just say signs an exclusive with the largest provider in the industry. And then let's just say, for example, that it turns out that things really aren't going right. How much power would a ResNet really have to be able to enforce its own rules? I mean, I hate to say it. So, as much as I've been positive about what's going on at the board level, one thing I'm nervous about with ResNet is ResNet's got to have enough legally enforceability of its standards because like I've seen a lot of like relatively small things with relatively small providers where they kind of like ResNet kind of backed down from the fight. They decided to just go ahead and give a less than a slap on the wrist, sort of we'll just go ahead and we'll let this one slide this time because we don't really want to fight about it in court. And man, if that's happening with relatively small fries, in an area where you could really probably stamp it down, man, it's just a shame to think that that's potentially happening or could happen with an even bigger organization. And, on that point of consolidation too, I'm just going to roll into mine here, Sandy. Now you got me on a roll. You brought back the true Chris Mack. I'm a true cynic. I'm a muckraker. I like to dig in there and pull it apart a little bit. So this issue of, consolidation, especially on the software side, look, everybody in the industry who's a provider learned, once you have essentially one tool for all intents and purposes, then they get to dictate the rules of engagement, even in a way that maybe isn't necessarily the best for you and your business. Now, I'll be honest, I think that some of the changes that have happened in that regard are probably overdue. And I don't necessarily blame an entity for wanting to make money off of the hard-earned efforts that they've done in order to put themselves in a good position. But, part of how we've gotten to this point is, I don't know. I mean, when BR first became a subscriber to multiple rating software tools, it's because we wanted competition in the marketplace. Well, now we're in a point where the script is just flipped, and now we don't have competition yet again. It was funny. Philip Ferry with FSEC, and Energy Gauge. He told me at this last board meeting, he was like, "I'm happy that I'm not really a software provider. I create software for my own research purposes." So he acknowledged that Energy Gauge is really not intended to be a market-facing energy rating tool. It's really not.
I would add to this, right? Like, I was in a meeting many moons ago for leading raters of America, and which is apparently dissolved, I guess. But it was, the top direct providers in the U.S. started this little thing that they were gonna, toss up the apple cart a little bit, get things going. And I was in this meeting with John Gillette, and I watched him like rip Remrate apart about there needs to be two software providers, and you guys need to get your shit together, and blah 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 blah. And at the time, I was like, man, that was really mean, But you know what? Now, as I look respect, kudos, he was right. He was absolutely right. And I think the question is really, Chris, is not that it's overdue or that these things should be, but where does it stop? Without competition that's credible, I mean, not for nothing. I don't mean to point out the obvious, but one of them's on the board, executive board, right, from the software. I mean, how much power does the software company yield? They can basically dictate anything they want to us now. right? And this just proves it. So again, without competition, look, we would be remiss as business people if we would do things that would turn our ratings away from our business, you know, and go to someplace else. If there's
Yeah,
no competition and nobody's left, it don't work, Chris. It just doesn't work.
yeah,
It's not good for anybody.
don't get me wrong. I'm pretty satisfied with the software that I have available to me. It's not like I don't like it, and it's not that I don't like the people either. One of the big reasons why BER moved to want to have multiple software tools and to encourage competition, 10 years ago or whatever, we were an early adopter of Ecotrope. We were one of their very first customers. And because we believed in this idea of competition. And I will say to their credit, Cy and Ziv and those folks, they have put customer service. That's how they won our business. And I think in general they have continued, despite the fact that they have kind of risen to be, kind of the overwhelming leader. I still think that they care about customer service. But I do wonder at a certain point is, sort of what's best for their bottom line, maybe even an example where it's not necessarily what's best for their customers' bottom line, where that might become an issue where we're at Irons, not just BER, but I've heard it from other providers. I've had providers calling me over the last couple of weeks saying it's not just what they're doing, but it's how they're doing it
Yeah.
that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like I'm being treated serious. And again, that's not even me. I'm not
Right.
even the one
I've
picking
got
up
the
the
same
phone
calls.
call.
We talked about it, Chris. I've gotten the same calls, from multiple providers across the country.
Yeah, and so look, I mean, and I'll say some of the merits have been a little bit overblown. Like I get these, emails. Well, ResNet, we've got, we're moving towards, we already have automated QA in the software, and we're moving to AI informed QA and the registry and all the rest like that. These are all false promises, and they're not real. And I'd like us to stop saying that they're real. So we were getting this briefing on the future of the AI registry, essentially. It wasn't called that, but it was essentially what the premise was at the board meeting. And I was so happy that I kept Aaron and Ian and other people like that there who were just like, what you're talking about might help to some degree with some things, but like it's years away. It doesn't solve our problem today. And it's really not probably going to work by and large overall for the industry. And, this idea that like, well, doesn't the software have automatic QA checks? During the board meeting, because I mean, I'll say to the credit, one software allows you to do a rating on your phone, which is really cool. So I did a rating on my phone with 1% framing factor in the walls, 52,000 square feet of solar panels, point zero 0.01 ACH 50, like just a bunch of crazy stuff. I just did the craziest stuff that you could imagine in the software, refrigerators with 1 kilowatt hour per year consumption, just the craziest stuff. Not one flag from the software. I could submit it to the registry with a minus 5,215 HERS index. And that could have been that's a hyperbolic example, almost, on the verge of profane. It's almost so extreme that it's almost like, oh, well, that's nonsense. Like a real example wouldn't go through. No, what I'm saying is the most extreme thing can go through, and therefore incrementally sort of minor, small, but definitely bullshit changes in the software can and are going through every single day.
Yep.
And they're not being flagged by the software as being aberrant. And personally, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I don't think that the software company is doing their job in order to police these things. I think that ultimately the software should prohibit these types of things from going on. In some ways,
haven't we heard this story before? what was it called? Oh, QA Genie. Didn't we hear this story before? Like it's like Groundhog Day. It really is. It's like the movie Groundhog Day. It's the same. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of a politician. Yeah, we're gonna cut the taxes. Yeah, we're gonna build roads. Yeah, we're gonna. Never happens. Bullshit.
Yeah, anyway, so, that's my one thing. And look, again, I just want to make sure that I qualify my statement to say, I think that, I think Ecotrope and the leaders of Ecotrope have been positive for the industry overall. I wish them financial success. And I'm sure they're going to continue to develop their tool. I just hope that they continue to listen to their customers, because ultimately that's how they got in the game to begin with. And if not, there may have to be more competition at some point in the future. I don't know who's going to come around with a bag of money in order to do that, but we'll see. All right, Sandy, I went off the deep end with some not so good stuff. You got to end this thing on a positive note. What are you thinking, my man?
I think that the one thing I absolutely love about what's going on right now in our industry is the fact that we're talking about, you know, we're talking about the future, and we're talking about training, and we're talking about expanding the business. And to me, that's the most exciting part of it, right? It's like it's positive, it's energetic, it's bursting energy into our organization, it's bursting energy into our business. And despite all the caveats and pitfalls and things that we have on the negative side, I think the overwhelming thing is positive, right? The IRA, all this state money, all this federal money, all these programs trying to improve that are also linked, like Energy Star. And I just think that, you know, it's an exciting time to be in the industry. I feel as though like I've been waiting for this for all the years I've been doing this. And even though the industry has grown over all the years, I see the growth path to be exponential and in many directions, right? There's not just one narrow path to take. Um, and to me, I got it from the conference. I'm sure I'm going to get it when I go to Capitol Hill the week after next. You know, all of these things. We're talking about the things that we have invested our lives in, that we put tons of energy and effort into. Um, Uriah, you built a business on, with an idea, and the idea became, a great company. And I just think that all these things, all these things that are going on, good and bad, but more good than bad, are exciting. It's invigorating. It gives me life. I mean, most people my age are starting to think about how they're going to back down. I'm not. I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go, man. You know what I mean? Like, let's go. Um, I've increased my travel. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to have these conversations. I'm excited to be talking about it. I'm excited that we have the BERcast and that we're talking about all these things and, bringing light to the issues of the industry and also bring light to the positive. And I think that's what I love about what you and I do in this so much is, yeah, we talk about bad things, but we talk a lot about good things too. And we bring both sides fairly. We don't pull no punches. And I'm just very excited. I think that the future is bright. I think the future is encouraging. I'm not worried about these funds being taken away. I'm not worried. Listen, I don't believe any of that. And I think that it's only going to get better. And I think after 2032, I think we're going to see something even bigger. I really do. And, it's an exciting time to be a rater, a QAD. It's exciting to be even a building performance, BPI analyst. And it's just exciting because there's so much going on. There's so many people talking about training. I talk to installation contractors. I talk to training people. I spoke to every part of the business. And it's not how can we get more knowledge? How can we make this work? How do we get more people? And it's nice to be involved in that, right? It's nice to be part of the conversation. It's nice to have the conversation about it. So that's my take. My positive is we're in a business that I think has an unbelievable future. I think that we have unbelievable opportunity, and they're only going to increase over time. And they're only going to get better over time. And the greatest part of it all is that we're doing the right thing when it comes to sustainability, and all the things attached with that. So that would be my positive uh, that I like about the industry and where we're going.
Yeah, man, I just, opportunities abound. If you are serious about being a professional, there's no better time than getting in this industry right now. A lot of people think, oh man, the right time was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now, the best time is now to get involved and to really get engaged. And if you can turn your professionalism up a notch, you have there's just more than enough work to go around. Wherever I go, it doesn't matter what market that I go to, and you know, it's not like the market is saturated for people who know what they're talking about. There is a demand for more people to skill up and to be able to deliver services at a high level. So please take Sandy and I up on that challenge, and let's continue to move forward as an industry. We're going to roll ahead into segment number 3. Just a quick little wrap about what's been going on in the world of sports. So, Sandy, football season's long over. Don't know if you've been watching the UFL or not, but I know I sure haven't. What about you?
I caught like a half a minute of it one day. It was only because my wife, I don't really watch TV except for sports games, and my wife was flipping through the channels. I'm like, oh, hold on, what is that? And I don't know. I can't remember even the name of the team, but they had like a tricolor helmet. Um, but yeah, no, not really. I haven't been paying any attention to it. It's just not the same flavor.
Yeah, so the merger of the XFL and the Donald's League, basically, so we got the UFL. There's a Detroit-based team. They're called the Michigan Panthers. But I don't know. I'm not super sold on it quite yet. But there have been other sports going on here. And so NBA. We're in playoff season for the NBA. Sandy, you much of a basketball fan or not so much?
Not really. When I was younger, I followed it. I would say I'm a Knicks fan. Probably if anything, but I really don't follow it anymore like I used to.
Well, guess what, buddy? You better get back in the game because look at this. Your
I
New
saw
York
it. Yeah.
Knickerbockers, #2 in the Eastern Conference. Pretty exciting stuff, man. I'll tell you what, I am a longtime NBA fan. It's been pretty hard to be an NBA fan this season and the last few seasons. The Detroit Pistons, my hometown, 3-time NBA champions, more championships than the Knicks, mind you, have fallen on some very dark times, and it's been hard to be a fan. But regardless, hey, it's playoff season. The NBA moved to a play-in tournament. The way this works, basically is that now to qualify for the somewhat postseason, you have to be in the top 10 in any conference. 7 and 8 play each other. The winner of that gets the 7th seed. The 8th seed then has to go ahead and play the winner of the 9th and the 10th game in order to basically see who takes the 8th seed. So in the East, the 76ers definitely took the 7th. Jimmy Butler got injured, I guess, in this last game, and so he's going to be out. So I'm Christine Doe with Resnet and NPR. She's a huge Jimmy Butler fan and Miami Heat fan. I'm sorry, Christine, you're going to be in bumming here because it could be my old home away from home, my rivals, but adopted somewhat fandom of the Chicago Bulls. Bulls may actually surprise people and get in the playoffs, so good for them. But if they did, they'd be playing the Boston Celtics, who are just seem like they are destined for a championship. They have by far the best construction of the team, by far the best record. You go out west, and it's incredible how tight things are.
Yeah.
The Warriors, they're basically done. This is the end of their road. They lost to the Sacramento Kings. They're out of the playoffs. Sacramento is going to face New Orleans to see who gets the 8th seed. I don't know, Sandy, you don't really follow this, but you got any teams here that stand out to you?
In this division, no. I would say that everything I still keep up, kind of read through the sports in the morning and stuff. It seems to me like Boston's going to be unbeatable, but you never know, you know. But yeah, no, I'm not really paying attention. I stopped paying attention to the NBA back in the Charles Spiro days of the Knicks. So it's been a while.
Wow, that's wow. You know what? I'm going to give a shout out to our buddy Scott Doyle with ResNet. He's a big Nuggets fan. I'm going to go ahead and say the Nuggets get out of the West again and go and face Boston for the NBA title, and we'll see if the Knicks can maybe upset somewhere in there. I don't know, but Jalen Brunson with the Knicks has really been surprising a lot of people with just how mature his game has been. So perhaps the Knicks actually come out as well. Turning over to the NHL, man, Sandy, I got the dumbest thing that I have to express to you, and this isn't just because I'm a Detroit guy. Like, I'm actually not much of an NHL guy, but the Wings are really close to making the playoffs. And I'm going to show you something crazy here. So this is the top 8 teams in the East. What you'll notice is that the Wings have 41 wins in an 82-game season. Okay, so that's what we would call a 500 season.
Yeah.
The Capitals have 40 wins, which would mean that they have 42 losses. Yet the Capitals are in the playoffs and the Wings aren't, because the way that they determine in the NHL who makes the playoffs when you have the same amount of points is who has the most. Yeah. It's who has the most regular time wins. So despite the fact that the Wings have one more win, the Capitals
must have been an overtime win.
Yeah, because they had more overtime wins. But that's just well, then why does this even matter? Why do we even have overtime? Why do we have shootouts? Why not just call it a tie like they used to back in the day with the NHL? If we're going to sort of ascribe these overtime and shootout wins as if they don't really count, well, then why even have them? Why not just have ties and we save people's bodies? I don't even get it, Sandy.
Yeah, that does kind of stupid.
Yeah. So, but again, you're a New York guy. It's a good time to be a New York guy. You got the Rangers and the Islanders. I'm assuming you're an Islanders guy, if you're anything. Is that true?
No, I'm a Rangers fan.
A Rangers guy? Come on, you're from the island. How can you not be an Islanders guy?
Greatest day of my life was when Mark Messier and then won in '94. One of the greatest days of my life. Yep, okay. No, Rangers fan. Well, I can't stand Islanders, and you got to remember the Islanders won 4 Stanley Cups in a row when I was a kid, and I do not like the Islanders. Never have, never been a fan.
So strange, because you are a Jets fan, right?
No,
you're not.
I'm a Giants
fan. Yeah,
Rangers. Nice try though.
You're a Mets guy though, right?
I am a Mets guy.
Okay. So you're somewhat of an island guy, but not when it comes to the New York Islanders.
I would say like normally like the city people that are from the city usually are like Giants, Knicks, and then the other the island people are usually like Mets and Nets and Islanders. So it's I am kind of an odd configuration.
Yeah, strange. I can't really tell you who's really going to come out of here, because I don't really follow hockey that much. But we'll keep our eye on how this develops, and maybe we'll touch back in on what's going on in the world of sports here. You going to place any big bets here, Sandy? You big better?
Absolutely not. I don't gamble, so
yeah, me neither. Yeah. Nope, our buddy from the Barstool Sports, he's out there raking it in, and we're here schlubbing away on the old BERcast, and we'll be back in a couple more weeks, just as rich as we were the day before, maybe even a little bit poorer because of inflation, but we're going to keep going at it no matter what. And we'll see you next time on the BERcast. Thanks everybody.